And away we go. Alright, just before I was getting into the one thing I've sent to the group chat, none of the other lads, well, until just a few seconds before starting this recording, had sent anything into the group chat. Until now, Eric Taylor has actually sent something after quite a while. It is an Instagram post, reel. Yeah, it's an Instagram reel. The caption reads of that Instagram reel, Benjamin Netanyahu's original last name was Mileikovsky. He went to high school in Philadelphia, and the internet is melting down over it. Yes. ... Really. Before becoming Israel's prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu spent part of his teenage years living in the United States and graduated from Cheltenham High School just outside Philadelphia. His father, historian Benjamin Netanyahu, originally Mileikovsky, was teaching at American universities, including Cornell University and Dropsy College. People are now discovering this and are losing it. Why does this feel like a detail that was quietly buried for decades? That is a very good question. Why now are people finding out about this? I'm not going to get into the rabbit hole stuff and the conspiracy theories. Even if any of those things are remotely true, there is more to the story and this information about Benjamin Netanyahu beyond such claims. Without a doubt, it is something that a lot of people would lose their minds over. Surely, people would have known this by now. But no, they're just now they're finding out about this. And people don't know what to think of this. What will people say after finding this information out? Are Jewish people or Israelis not actually Semites? Or not really Semitic people? Are these people trying to conceal their identity to make sure that... Actually, I don't know. I don't even know where I'm going with that. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm not sure if anyone would ever see something like that, personally. So yeah, the more you know, guys. And so what? Everyone changes their surname. Zach Polanski is not actually the name he was given at birth. It was something else. Last time I checked, his first name at birth was Zach. Well done. Oh, bugger, I'm having a brain fart here. So yeah, the point I'm making is the current leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. He changed his last name, whatever it was in the past, to Polanski to honor his Jewish heritage. Which, fair play to him. He wants to honor his heritage, fair enough. Of course, not everyone's going to be on board with that. There's going to be people that'll be against Jewish people. If that's what Polanski wants, then all to him, I guess. So back to the story. Now back to the Instagram reel about Benjamin Netanyahu's surname. And I'm just thinking, if Benjamin Netanyahu's birth surname is Mileikovsky, is there any relations between him and Javier Mileikovsky? Or Javier Milei? That's what I'm thinking. I've seen a couple of Instagram reels a while ago that Javier Milei is actually Javier Mileikovsky. And I'm just wondering if Javier and Benjamin are in any way related to each other, or it's just the fact they just share the same surname and they're not actually related to each other directly, like you would with sharing the same parents, sharing the same grandparents, or sharing the same great grandparents. I'm not saying this is true. I'm seeing the similarity and association with the surname Mileikovsky. I'm just wondering if Benjamin and or Javier is related in some way. We'll have to wait and find out if anything is said about that. If not, then, well, life goes on, as it does. I'll be absolutely honest. And again, about changing your name for whatever reason that is down to the individual, and that's not many people's business. Even if people do change their names at any point in their lives, what's the big deal? Who's not to say that people change their surname at their own accord? Or maybe these people change their surnames or first names as a way to conceal their identity from potential threats that could be a threat to their lives. Until there's any clarification or any more information about any of these such claims, it is only a theory. A game theory. I miss those days. Those were the days of YouTube. I'm getting sidetracked now. Alright, so if it wasn't for Eric sharing that particular Instagram reel, mere seconds before I started recording this episode, I shared another website, Epstein Exposed. It's similar to jmail.world, which is a website showcasing publicly available and accessed information, documents, email responses, pictures, receipts, and so on related to the Epstein files that people can look at and find out more about what really went on behind the fiasco that is the Epstein files. And according to these statistics that just appeared on the website, it reads 1,498 persons, 3,615 flights, 2.15 million documents, 51,254 connections. I'd assume this is looking at Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm going to press the surprise me button to see what other statistics this website is. Oh, I pressed the surprise me button. It's just giving me something at random. And look, I'm looking at document EFTA 01650004. Date unknown. Reference EFTA. The numbers I already just read. Persons 0. Source DOJ dataset 10. Pages 2. Integrity awaiting verification. So I'm just looking at Epstein Exposed and looking at one of the files of the Epstein files and see what it reads. Oh, this is an email. Subject reads RE colon victim assistance in South Africa. Date Wednesday, 9th of October 2019 at 16:13 hours UTC 0 or UK time during the spring and winter. The email reads, "Hi, I just forwarded you the victim's information. If you scroll to the bottom initial email, it will give you of the information regarding the request. The case agent is also copied and she can answer any questions. Also, please feel free to call my cell. Thanks." And then the forwarded message below reads, on October 9th, 2019, 8:09 a.m. The message reads, "Can you provide any details about the victim so we can loop in consular and see if they can help? Question mark. A name, passport number, DOB, etc. Any details about what the person is going back for victim interview to provide testimony, etc. If we can show the immediacy of the travel, maybe we can get this done. A. Assistant Legal Attached. USMC Pretoria, South Africa." So that's just a brief of that email, which I'm just reading, which just appeared to me at random on EpsteinExposed.com. That is shocking. Madness. And of course, whatever the victims have been through regarding the Epstein files is very unfortunate. I feel sorry for those people. They deserve better. This is absolutely criminal. Not metaphorically, literally as well. How the handling of these files has been showcased. And whilst not many people are talking about the Epstein files now, like they did months ago, because of, well, whatever's going on in Iran, it just comes to show, even when there's information about the most heinous of offences, the most diabolical of operations of or against any groups of people anywhere in the world, or at least any attempts or operations regarding discomfiting the victims who at the time were young children, or at least for the most part. I, I don't think there are people in this world that are mad enough about how little is being done to tackle the rest of the Epstein files, or specifically information that has not been made public yet, and providing viable punishment to those people involved. And whilst people will make the point that not everyone on Epstein's island is in any way guilty for what they have done, it does raise alarm bells. Do they even know about this operation? Did they play any role in what Epstein was running on his island and other affiliates that Epstein had connections with? And whilst you can't always say that anyone that's been referenced or even mentioned a couple times in the Epstein files, don't brush it off so lightly. Don't take it with a pinch of salt. There's a target on their heads now. Anything these people do next, people are going to be watching them like a hawk or any apex predator in the animal kingdom. It's not looking good for anyone that was even mentioned once in the Epstein files. It's all it takes to tarnish your reputation. One mention of your name in the Epstein files, everyone is going to come at you. Your life will be in shambles. Everyone's going to be questioning, what do you think of these victims? Why did you let any of these things happen? What are you going to do about these things? And the case regarding the Epstein files, there's so dang much that is not being made clear yet. So yeah, that is all. That's what I would say regarding what I just read, the the Epstein files in general, and of course the website epsteinexposed.com, which I just found at some point. Of course, jmail.world is also a useful website for looking at information regarding the Epstein files. You know it's bad that there is a website showcasing publicly evidence and information regarding a court case in question, let alone two websites showcasing to the public evidence and information about any case of any ongoing investigation. That's how bad it really is. This is how bad the Epstein files is. Not one, but two websites showing evidence and information regarding the Epstein files. One of the biggest investigations in the world, all publicly for the world to see. And again, to all the victims that were unfortunate to be a part of the Epstein files, I feel so sorry for them. So traumatizing. And of course, for some that even spoke out bravely about the Epstein files, we're not gonna hear or see them again. They're no longer alive. Not all, but some that spoke out about the Epstein files are no longer alive. And that's the worst of it. If these people are alive today, there could be more. A lot more that is worth mentioning addressing to the public, anywhere and anything from across the globe. And that is all that has to be. And that is everything in the group chat that me and the lads have sent. Or at least I thought it was just me, which just sent again a few seconds before I started recording. So yeah. So with all of that being said, let's get right into the news. I don't want to. That sounds like something Keemstar had said for quite a while now, doing drama alerts. Oh yes, drama alerts. Look, Keemstar may be a dick, but he's my dick. No, okay, that's terribly wrong. That was terrible. No, what I meant to say was, Keemstar may be a dickhead, but he's my dickhead. And to everyone that watched Drama Alert, he is everyone's dickhead. Oh, I can't wait to see people trying to use that part and trying to get a reaction out of that. Boy, I'm gonna be waiting to see what comes out of that. So, alright, yeah, let's get into the rest of the news. Heat-driven inactivity could claim 7,000 lives annually by 2050, Lancet study projects. A study in the Lancet Global Health projected rising temperatures could cause up to 700,000 additional premature deaths annually by 2050, alongside $3.68 billion in productivity losses. Rising global heat increases cardiovascular strain, dehydration, and perceived exertion, making outdoor movement psychologically and physically more challenging and pushing millions in tropical regions towards sedentary behavior. Researchers analyzed data from 156 countries between 2000 and 2022, finding that for every additional month with temperatures above 82 degrees Fahrenheit, global physical inactivity rises by 1.5 percentage points. Women and adolescents in tropical, low, and middle-income countries face the greatest risks, often lacking access to climate-controlled spaces and resources to absorb resulting health and economic burdens. The study recommends prioritizing heat-adaptive urban design, subsidizing climate-controlled exercise facilities, and public health communication alongside ambitious global emissions reductions to mitigate emerging health and economic burdens. Yes, the heat, everyone knows it. Very, very unfortunate. And whilst there will be technology to combat the heat and any humidity that makes the heat a lot more unbearable, there will be cases that even all of these technological advancements, that's not going to be enough to ensure that everyone can continue living life and contributing within their local communities. And whilst there are going to be people pointing fingers at climate change, human activity is what's causing the planet to warm up every year, we can't always point fingers at climate change. There are other aspects to the rising heat in tropical countries. For instance, the concrete on the that's been placed on the ground, the lack of vegetation. And I'm not just talking about trees, plants, lily pads, or whatever vegetation of any plant species. I'm talking about providing natural shelter for people to protect themselves from the blistering sun. This is not to say I am all for climate change or anything to combat against it. All I'm saying is don't always point fingers at climate change. Even if there are changes to our climate, little by little each year, what if climate change isn't the only reason? Even when people try the hardest to even tackle every aspect of climate change to the best of their ability, what if the heat still continues to rise? What do we point fingers at now? What do we say to say we need to this is the problem and we need to fix it immediately? Another aspect to rising heats in tropical countries, or just any country where temperatures can get to 20 degrees Celsius, it comes down to how cities are planned. If there isn't enough shelter, natural shelters to be specific, and there isn't enough material that balances absorbing heat and bouncing off the heat from critical infrastructure, then the rise of this heat is going to continue. Even with all of our efforts to combat climate change, there are other reasons, as well as tackling the reasons that are in this world are not going to be enough to eradicate the problems that we have today. There has to be more. Madness. Very madness. Digital reconstruction reveals the face of Littlefoot, a nearly 4 million-year-old human ancestor. Oh wait, I've already read that a while ago. So sorry, guys. Yeah, what's up with me? Gotta find something else. My mind's not in the right place. So sorry, guys. Typical new mortgage costs soar £788 a year in 2 weeks. That doesn't sound good. By the start of March, Moneyfacts found the average mortgage shelf life in the UK mortgage market fell to 2 weeks, the shortest period recorded in more than 2 years. After the US-Israel strikes on Iran, swap rates rose and lenders began repricing and pooling products. A shift Rachel Springle, finance expert at Moneyfacts, linked to Middle East unrest. Data shows the 2-year fixed rate jumped to 5.28%, making a typical 25-year, £250,000 mortgage £788 more expensive annually, and 5-year fixes £651 costlier, Moneyfacts said. Major lenders have pulled their most competitive deals, with at least 530 homeowners deals vanished since Monday, March 9th, and 689 fewer products available, according to Moneyfacts. With the Bank of England meeting this Thursday, Adam French warned borrowers may need to brace for further volatility in the weeks ahead, as the global economy braces for a Trumpflation wave flowing from the US and Israel-led action in Iran. Everyone is going to talk about Iran. Even I don't talk about anything within Iran, or even anything within Israel and or the United States, any other story for any other topic, like finance, architecture, public transit, everyone's going to say that the war within Iran against Israel and the United States is the reason why many of our economic problems are looming among us. Even if any of that is true, there is a difference in economic situations because of the Strait of Hormuz being blocked for certain countries. There's limitations of exports flowing about to other countries. This is just me. I know everyone's going to have a different take on this. The effects that happens in other countries because of what's happening in Iran, with attacks coming from the US and Israel. I'm not going to say I'm not saying it's not as bad. It is not as big of a deal within our own borders as the news make it out to be. Yes, things are expensive, especially the fuel for our cars, lorries, and other vehicles that use petrol. The rise, although noticeable, it could be higher. How could this be higher? Just remember that whatever oil refineries in Iran, weapons produced in Iran, likewise, the the aforementioned stuff that's also being produced and stored in other Middle Eastern countries, like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, and so on. There are other countries beyond Iran and nations of the Middle East that have the resources and the facilities to provide oil as well as sell it to other countries, as well as having other economic aspects in providing global events, services, investments. I'm talking countries like Japan, China, I would say the US, but we all know that the US is big in every aspect, and people are going to talk about the US no matter what. And there's Brazil as well, with their with economic opportunities. Even if I know if Risk was on here, he would say Brazil is not as big because a certain president that's currently in power is making a mess of things. That's at least what he would say. Risk 11. Nonetheless, Brazil is a big country, and there's lots of activity economically within Brazil, in all of its states, plus Brasilia, the federal district. And of course, there's Venezuela with all of these oils, which everyone was talking about when Maduro was taken out of power and being held in a prison cell in New York City, or at least somewhere in the New York state. Not sure where exactly in New York, but certainly Maduro was somewhere in New York being held in a prison cell. So yeah, Iran isn't the only country with weapons and facilities to produce oil and sell it to other countries. Same can be said with the Middle Eastern countries. They also produce oil and sell it to other countries. They are also not the only few countries that have the economic power in regards to oil and, to some extent, weapons. There's Venezuela, which, as a lot of people know, also produces oil. Then, of course, Norway. Norway's a country that has oil refineries and extraction facilities and resources. And Norway have been very smart with the money that's produced from oil. They created a wealth fund. So, in case of any economic uncertainties, Norway is in the clear. They're not guaranteed to be protected from any harsh economic conditions. They're at least prepared for the worst if anything were to happen. And of course, give some of the money to the Norwegian people for reasons that people might need money for healthcare, maybe cover costs for necessities. But at least I know last time people in Norway got something from their national wealth fund is in regards to healthcare costs. That's at least my rough recall, memory-wise. It's been a few years, so things in Norway could have changed drastically since then. So back to the story about 700 pitch costs. I'm not going to argue that things are going to get more expensive because of certain wars taking place somewhere around the world. I will say, even if there is a difference in costs in anything, it could be worse. It could be a lot worse. Don't think what goes on in Iran is the only country that has any market share or would make any huge impact in our world today. There are other countries that produces oil and sells the oil to other countries. There are other countries that produce their own weapons instead of having to go to the US and buy weapons off them. Although that's not a lot of countries. There are still yet countries that somehow produce weapons that are not as great as what the US has. They still do it anyway. in case, well, relations cut off. You never know, you gotta prepare yourself. So yeah, something. Very something. That's all I can think of. There could be more. Or maybe not. That could be it. Otherwise, we can't just think that it's the end of the world because one war cut off supply of economic demand or exports to other countries. We can't just think like that. There will be other reasons for why costs are going up. There could be countries where, even though war is happening, where there's lots of economic activity going on, the costs, whether they go up and down, is mostly cheaper than it does go up, although very unlikely. That scenario is unlikely. If it was to happen, it would be down to the fact that countries, A, have prepared themselves for the worst, and I'm not just talking about creating a wealth fund, to cover any excess costs of economic uncertainty. B, they have prepared, they've they planned things out in the long term to be independent from getting resources from other countries. And this is one of the few things I've said about, whilst the United States has strong relations with lots of countries, and many countries want to do trade with the US, trading only with the US is not a good way of continuing running a country. And whilst other countries will certainly do, or at least prioritize trade with other neighboring countries nearby, you just gotta diversify how you operate, how you negotiate. If you stick to one thing, and that one thing is gone, now what? What are you gonna do next? Gotta do something. Who knows? Only time will tell. If anything in Iran does improve, I hope things in Iran improve. We're gonna be hearing more about this for the next few weeks. Maybe a couple more months for sure. We're still going to be hearing about Iran. Even I don't even mention any stories relating to whatever goes on within Iran, or anything within Israel or the United States. The Sydney Swans apologized for omitting mention of the Jewish community in their tribute to the Bondi terror attack victims. Radio commentator Gerard Healy and Senator James Patterson criticized the lack of references to the Jewish community as the target of the attack. The Swans chairman took responsibility for the omission, stating it was an error of judgment made in an attempt to be inclusive. So firstly, before I get to the main point I want to make, the moment the Bondi attack happened, the shooting at Bondi Beach, regardless of your identity, ethnicity, religious faith, and another thing, no one deserves to lose their life. There shouldn't be any violence on any groups of people whatsoever. I am against that, strongly. And I can't stress that enough, more than I currently am right now. And back now to the point I want to make regarding the story. Swans apologized after Jewish references cut from Bondi attack tribute. I just read a very short brief on that story. I just want to know, what is the tribute even about? Where is this tribute taking place? Was it before or after another event that a lot of people were attending for reasons to their own amusement? If people are going to do something, people should do it because they want to, not because they have to. And whilst not everyone has to reference or bring up what happened at Bondi Beach when the shooting happened, it is important for moments there is an opportunity to make tributes and references to the Bondi Beach shooting. It is important, besides mentioning the names of the people whose lives were lost on that day, it is also important to mention the impact it had on their families, and what these people who lost their lives could have been. What could they have done if they were alive today? And also looking back on their lives about who they were as people, up until the moment the unfortunate scenario had happened on them. I'm not going to say the lack of such is the reason why the tribute did not go ahead, according to the Sydney Swans. It's at least it is important to bring up information, not just from the perspective of what bystanders make of the situation. There has to be information that is being brought up by the family members of the unalived victims about what happened on that day on Bondi Beach. And again, I'm not saying that the lack of these elements is the reason why the tribute of the Bondi terror attack victims didn't happen at whatever events thereafter or before the tribute was supposed to happen. Details like that is certainly worth noting. And although it isn't going to fix everything, it's at least something to talk about. It is a lesson learned, and for the most part, it is a demonstration. No matter what path we walk on, what background is behind us, we're all united against the violence that has taken the lives of our loved ones. Asteroid Ryugu contains all 5 building blocks of life. Hey then. Laboratory analyses of Ryugu samples show all 5 nucleobases, as reported in Nature Astronomy, with samples returned by JAXA's Hayabusa 2 mission. To probe origins, the team compared Ryugu with Bennu, Murchison, and Oguye to map nucleobase abundance and study carbon-rich asteroids' role in early Earth's prebiotic chemistry. Chemical analysis showed Ryugu had roughly equal amounts of purines and pyrimidines, notably detecting thiamines and contrasting with Bennu and meteorites skewed toward one family. Implications include support for the RNA world hypothesis, as the findings strengthens the idea that ingredients for life may be common in the solar system and could have been delivered to early Earth. With Ryugu now analyzed, researchers note this makes 2 sample sets, filling Ryugu's earlier gap after Bennu's full-set discovery. Now, there were a handful of words that I was struggling to pronounce. I'm not going to deny that. It is very interesting that the asteroids that come down to our Earth and the elements within those asteroids is the key to life, or at least the answer to life, or anything relating to life. That asteroid in question had a lot of it. So yeah, I'm not sure where all the other news outlets at talking about this story, how the elements within the asteroid contains the answers to life, or at least contributes to our way of life. And if anyone's going to sell these elements, I wonder at what price would these elements be sold for? And is there anyone on this planet that has the money to afford them? And if people do have the money to afford these so-called asteroid-like elements, what are they going to be used for? There's not much going forward with these elements from this asteroid. Nonetheless, that is Baba Booey, Bada Boom, Bada Bing, so on and so forth. For one asteroid, that is a lot of life-esque component that contributes to our way of living. That is quite a stretch. Now, surely someone's got to find a safe place to store it, so that way criminals don't take it for themselves and use the elements for their own personal gain, if they find out what it could be used for, and then exploit it for their own gain. So yeah, I think that's it for this episode.